Hi, if I can have everyone's attention, can you hear me okay? Okay, we're going to get started, so if you have a question, please just write it on the card and put it in the box in the back. And I want to introduce our moderator for today, Marge Canuti. So, Marge, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for attending this. It's very important that people come to these events and learn about our candidates so they can make informed votes. And this is the 12th annual Meet the Candidates forum that we have had. And we have refreshments in the back of the room if anybody wants any. And the way this is going to proceed, we will have the town manager, James Gilway, and he's going to give a brief state of the town talk. And after he is done, you will have an opportunity to ask him some questions. Then we have 3 candidates for selectmen. We have Meredith Ayers, Mark Bradstreet, and Chris Colby. And they will all have an opportunity to give an opening statement. And then after that, I will ask from the questions that you have written down, each one of the candidates a question, and they will have to answer. And I will rotate so everybody doesn't always get the first or the last question. And then we have Jerry French, who is going to be running for school board, and he is unopposed, but he is still going to tell you who he is and why he's running for school board. And then at the end of our meeting, he would like to have you ask him any questions that you may have. So, why don't we begin with James?
I'm actually going to turn in hopes that the camera will make me slimmer. And just to correct one thing, I will be here at the end of the meeting to answer questions individually. Last year I answered a lot of questions at the end of this, and I took away from the candidates, and it made for a very long afternoon. So I will be here afterwards for questions. And I am reading my report if anyone wants to follow in the book to prove that I can read and write. This year has been a relatively quiet year as far as personnel matters go. In July, we hired Katie Hessler to be our library director. Katie's been a great addition to our team. At the end of the year, Bob Bouchard retired from the wastewater department. We were prepared for a long search for a certified applicant. We fortunately found a young man from Winterport with the proper credentials, and in late January, we hired Dan Smith as our wastewater operator. Our auditors visited in mid-January, and they were able to complete the site visit in 4 days. And we had a printed audit by the end of the next week. This is the first time that's ever happened. I believe this is due greatly to a greatly improved record-keeping process on our part. The auditors reported that we earned $24,082.98 in interest on our investments last year. This is up $2,127.07 from the previous year. As of December 31st, we were at about 90% of the taxes collected. This is $827,768 in auditors report that our unappropriated surplus, I guess I don't do good at reading and writing, is $827,768. This is $63,557 more than the end of last year. At our last year's town meeting, we did not approve any surplus to offset property taxes, and that helped our bottom line. We are recommending to use a small amount of this to offset the 2016 taxes. The state budget changes made after our annual town meeting provided us with an additional $20,000 of revenue sharing that was not anticipated in our budget. Revenue sharing is secure for the coming year, and the additional revenue coupled with the small surplus amount that I mentioned above will provide us with virtually no budget increase for 2016. We are able to acquire a few items of equipment last year. We received 4 large trucks from military surplus. They're being used for road repair and snow removal. We invested in our infrastructure, and we paved the Resch Road and portions of Old County Road. We did our best to repair many of the other roads in town. We did replace another large section of underdrain on Prospect Street, and with state and federal grants, we completed the wharf rebuild. We have a new front counter. It was built and installed in the town office, and we replaced our phone system and our internet to high-speed fiber optic providers. We also received a grant and replaced the old fluorescent lighting in the town office with energy-efficient LED lighting, which will save us in the future. We will be hosting a Maritime Homecoming Weekend on August 5th and 6th this year. We hope that we can highlight the past, the present, and the future of our maritime heritage. We are in the planning phase and certainly welcome any input and needed volunteers to make this a great success. I am in the second session of my third term and representing Searsport in the House District 98 in Augusta. I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to do this job for you. Last year I was successful in getting LD 1277 passed. This legislation creates a marine-related magnet school in Searsport. There is more work to be done to bring this plan to completion, and I am committed to the effort. Because of this commitment, I am not always physically in the office. However, I am in constant contact via email and cell phone. Our capable staff is always able to reach me. I truly want to thank the citizens of Searsport for your support. I thank the Board of Selectmen and the committees and boards for their efforts and continued support. And I especially want to extend my sincerest thanks to the incredible employees that work for our town. I am constantly communicating with my peers and talking about the various problems and issues that our neighbor communities in Maine are facing. Employees created many of these issues. It's obvious that our personnel work hard and keep us out of similar troubles. We should all be very proud of our staff. I've got at least one here, and I have some part-time and some volunteers here, and I truly want to thank them and give them a round of applause. And as I said, I'll be here. I don't want to take away from the candidates, and I'll answer questions for anyone at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thanks, James. As I said, we have 3 candidates for one selectman's position. Meredith Ayers, who is running for re-election, and Mark Bradstreet and Chris Colby. And they will each have 2 minutes to give an opening statement, and then I will start with questions. And they will have 2 minutes to answer a question also. And when they have 30 seconds left, Marietta, you timekeeper, she will put up a little notice so you'll know that you have 30 seconds left, and then when your time is up, she'll let you know that too, okay? And then, as I mentioned before, Jerry will make a statement too. At the end of the session, when everything is done, if you have follow-up questions, please do ask them, and the candidates will all have a chance to make a closing statement too. And then, as James said, he's going to be available if you have any questions to ask him. Yes? I'm sorry? Oh, well. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Okay, so why don't I start with Meredith?
Thank you all for being here and taking an interest in this election. I want to tell you all why I'm running for re-election, but first I need to tell you why I ran in the first place 3 years ago. Like everybody else, I could see that Searsport is a divided town, and the partisanship that arises from that divide was getting in the way. Everyone in town agrees that we need jobs, we need development and growth, but the town seemed paralyzed by an us versus them mentality that got in the way of doing the things that would bring prosperity to our town. 3 years ago, I was naive. I reasoned that since everyone in town wants the same things, we all want Searsport to be a nice place to live, we want good town services, we want low taxes and good schools. Since we all want the same things, And since we understand that in order to have these things, or in order to be able to afford these things, we need growth and prosperity. So I thought, how hard could it be to get everyone to work together to achieve these things? Well, in the past 3 years, I've learned how stubborn and unreasonable partisanship can be. It causes people not to listen to each other, and it causes us to believe things about each other that are not true. When people give in to partisanship, they refer to each other as they, they don't understand, they are selfish or whatever. And anyway, over the last 3 years, I've been knocking on doors all around Searsport. I've gone to the homes of people that I know and people I don't know, not to tell them what I think or try to convince them of anything, but to hear what they think and why they think it, and to try to learn what their experiences have been with the town. I've learned that some people who serve our town, whether as employees or volunteers, or whether they get a stipend for whatever it is they do for us, some of them need to remember that their position is not a position of power, but a position of service. We are here to serve the best interests of the town and all the people who live in town. It's not okay to follow a personal agenda or play favorites. Citizens rightly expect us to do our jobs and to be fair. We all have hopes for our town, and the things that each of us believes need to happen in order for the town to be prosperous may differ, but they are not mutually exclusive. There is no reason that everyone's reasonable expectations can't be met. Truly time? Can I just say one more thing? There's room in our town for industry, knocking on doors all around Searsport. I haven't met a single person who doesn't want industry to come to Searsport. Lots of people have strong opinions about the kind of industry they would welcome here or where in town they would like it to be located, but everybody wants it. There's room in our town for retirees and tourism, and there always has been. Over at the museum, there are old photos of the big hotel that used to be in Searsport and the little summer cabins. There are also photos of ships that came to our working port bringing coal to run our factories. There were boat builders. Clearly, there was a time when tourism and industry coexisted here in a way that worked for everybody, and it still can, if we considerate of each other and don't give in to snarky one-upmanship. I have more to say, but I'm out of time, so thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Bradstreet. I'm so happy to see a good crowd here, and I know there's more people watching this at home on TV, and it'll probably be rerun again. My wife and I have lived in Searsport for almost 20 years, and we run a business in Searsport, and it's a great town. And I've served on a number of committees. I've worked for the town on election matters, and I felt it was time that I should run for selectman. There's been a lot of issues, and being on the planning board certainly has exposed me to a lot of varying issues in the town and differing opinions. I've worked with both sides on issues, and I feel I have an open ear to hear both sides, or more than both sides of an issue, and to try to come to an accommodation that brings people together. As we all know, we need to balance our residential and our industrial and our business and tourism, because this is a wonderful town to live in, and it's a wonderful, the town employees are all great. When I worked for the Census Bureau, I had a chance to go to a lot of towns in Waldo County, and I think our town office is one of the friendliest of any town office that I would visit anywhere in Maine. And I think we have a great place here, and I just want to work together with everybody in town to try to make this a better town to live in. Thank you very much.
Chris.
First off, I want to thank you all for participating in today's Meet the Candidates. I live in town here. I live at 27 Prospect Street along with my wife, Diane Marie. We own Searsport Motor Company. We started that in '01, and it has grown from just a small business to a very viable business now. The reason that I wanted to run for selectman is every morning I get up and I look forward to having coffee in the morning over at Steamboat. So I started seeing some guys over there, and I said, well, I got a coffee, I'll start hanging out with these guys. These seem like pretty rational people, so I started hanging out with them. Well, if you're there any length of time, 7 o'clock goes to 8 o'clock. I'm supposed to be to work at 8 o'clock, and it turns into 8:30, 9 o'clock. So, and as you can imagine, when everybody's having coffee in the morning, they're what's going on in town today, Scotty? What's going on in town? And everybody wants to know. So I'm listening, and I was thinking, well, I can either be a part of the problem or a part of the solution. So I felt with my business acumen that I would try to, be a part of the solution. I look at the town now and I see, like Meredith says, a huge divide. And before anything happens, before anything moves forward from this point forward, I mean, we've been talking about it for a couple of years, that divide needs to be healed. It certainly needs to be healed. There's nothing that any one person can do. It has to be, everybody has to be on board with that. Until that happens, nothing's going to happen. I mean, it's a waste of time, effort, and money that we spend. So I've got my door is always open, my phone is always on, and I would love to hear from anybody and everybody. I may not always agree with you. You will always know where I stand on an issue, but I'm certainly willing to listen. I'd listen to anybody, and if anybody wants to stop and join us for coffee in the morning, either at Steamboat or at Searsport Motor Company, I'd love to have you. Thank you.
Jerry.
My name is Jerry French. I'm running as a writing candidate unopposed for the school board, which basically is pathetic. If you want to know the truth, in this town, that I'm the only one to pick up papers. You've got a lot of things that we need to deal with the school department on a regular basis. And I am not only proud of the school, I'm proud of this community. I was born and raised here. My father graduated from Searsport High School. I graduated from Searsport High School. My little son graduated from Searsport High School. My two younger sons attended Searsport Elementary School. This community has always meant a lot to me. And my hope is to practice fiscal responsibility while building the school department into the best functioning school department that it can be. And my hope is to represent you, the voters, the taxpayers, as well as the students. I would welcome the opportunity to answer any questions when the appropriate time comes. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerry. One thing I forgot to mention, if you would hold any applause until the very end, and at the end, the three candidates for select person will be making a statement, and Jerry will take any questions that you may have. So, whoops. So, we'll start with the questions. And I'll start with you, Meredith. Next time I'll start with Mark. Next time I'll start with Chris. Meredith, tell us about your position on economic development and how you will work to protect the interest of existing businesses over new businesses.
Thank you. As I think everybody has mentioned so far, the trick to really moving forward with economic development here in Searsport is to try to heal the divide that has been dividing the town for such a long time. It gets in the way of cooperation. It gets in the way of people listening to each other and paying attention and empathizing with each other's concerns. What was the second part of the question?
Let's see. How you will work to protect the interest of
Yes,
existing businesses over new businesses.
That's something that needs a lot of work too, because there have been a number of things that have happened just recently where businesses have come into town and the process wasn't adequate to really take into concern everybody's interests. I think there needs to be better communication. There needs to be more notice so that people who have concerns about things that are coming into town have an opportunity to come forward and discuss it. If we discuss things together as a town, if we communicate, and if we're willing to listen to each other, so many of the things that contribute to the divide in the town can be eliminated or avoided. And I think that's communication, listening, honesty, and being forthcoming with people and letting them know what the issues are. Also requiring applicants to tell the truth and having some kind of consequences when applicants who come in to get a permit in town are not truthful with us. And at the moment, there seem to be no consequences for that. That's something that needs to change, because in order for this to work, everybody has to trust the system and feel confident.
Thank you. Mark?
Okay, same question?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. I feel I've had some experience with these issues because I was on the committee that helped write the comprehensive plan. We bent over backwards to try to balance that plan to serve everyone in the community. And now that it's been in effect for a few years, I think we all can see certain areas that need strengthening, which would protect everybody. There was a lot of controversy when it was proposed, but I think everyone has come to realize the value of it now that it's been in effect for years. And then on the planning board, I've experienced the same situations where business will come in and we have to, see if it meets the requirements of the comprehensive plan and if it's going to affect, its neighboring businesses, if it will fit in. I can think of one instance where we actually turned down a business because it would have created such a disturbance to the business next door that it would have affected their business. So I think we're going to have to look at everything that comes in. I believe Searsport wants to be a open and open for business town, but within the regulations that we prescribe as residents of this town to make sure that everything that comes here fits in, and we don't want to be seen as anti-business because we've had to turn down some things. So I think serving on these committees will help give me the insight if I'm elected to the Board of Selectmen. And I do believe that we need a strong economic development committee that would look for the type of businesses that we need. I've been a proponent of having a business land set aside under the comprehensive plan for a business park for future development of non-heavy industrial businesses away from the port. So that's just some of my ideas on the subject.
Thank you. Chris?
Well, I'd like to think that I've got a little bit of background in this. We just started in October of last year, Rockland Motor Company down in Rockland, and being used to Searsport and how business is done is fine, and just kind of like it's a little bobber, just floating down the river. When I went to Rockland, much to my surprise, I went in with the code enforcement officer, the CEO, and told him what I had planned on doing. Well, my wife was with me, and I'm like, he said, well, hold on, sit down here. He says, we want to talk to you about this. And I had a small plan, a small building. It was on a half-acre lot, and this is what I wanted to do. And he says, hold on, let me get the city manager. And all of a sudden, everybody started coming out, the city manager and like I say, the code enforcement officer, and there was a couple other people there, and they were just like rolling the red carpet out. So I think what we need to do is to embrace everybody that comes through the door I know in my business, when somebody comes through the door, you don't, hey, how you doing? You know what, you go shake the person's hand, you embrace them, and you want to know, well, what can I do to be of service to you? And I think that that's the first thing that we should do, is basically take care of the businesses that we do have, and then expand upon that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, and I'll start with you, Mark. How do you feel about developing the Sears Island Marine area as a marina boatyard? Is this not more germane to our past history as a seaport?
Well, part of the development of Sears Island is set in stone because there's a roughly, I think, 600 acres that's been set aside as a preserve that will stay always natural, which is a great plan. And there's, I think, roughly around 300 acres on the Mac Point side that's been set aside by the state as a developable area. And it's my opinion that it should strictly be marine tourism related type development. A pier that could take a cruise ship, mariner type properties such as what was recently built in Belfast. And that type of activity, I think, would be good for the town of Searsport. So I don't want to see any other type of industry on the island other than marine related.
Thank you. Chris? Sure. How do you feel about developing the Sears Island Marine area as a marina boatyard? Is this not more germane to our past history as a seaport?
We do have a rich history in Searsport as being a seaport, and I understand that, but I also think that, we can sit here and that's what we were, but we have to look forward. We have to look forward to, the kids growing up in the area. We have to look forward to the people that live here. And, we'll just take Belfast, for instance. Well, they were all in shambles when the chicken factories left, but, you can sit there and go, geez, I wish the chicken, well, we can wish in one hand, and it doesn't always work out that way. I think we have to be progressive in our thinking, and I would be all for that. Anything to do with Sears Island, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Meredith?
There is a portion of Sears Island that has been set aside for any kind of marine activity that is available for development, and it's kind of inevitable that someday it will be developed in that way. I think a marina, something of that kind, would be a wonderful use of that for that part of the property. Absolutely, that really solves a lot of problems.
Thank you. So this next question, I'll start with you, Chris. Actually, there are two questions that are pretty similar. I'm going to read them. I think you can answer them all in one answer. Do you support the movement of more cargo in and out of the port of Searsport? Why or why not? And do you support the expansion at Mac Point? Well, no, they're two different ones. I'll just do the first one. Do you support the movement of more cargo in and out of the port of Searsport? Why or why not?
I think it all comes down to jobs. It all comes down to jobs, and it all comes down to tax base. On one hand, we don't want our taxes to go up, but on the other hand, we don't want any growth. You have to give up one or the other. It can't be both. You cannot have taxes go down and growth go down also. So, absolutely, I would be in support of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Make sure you're
Always on.
You're on, yes. Yes. That's what James wanted to say. Yeah.
Could you read the question again, please?
Okay. Oops. Do you support the movement of more cargo in and out of the port of Searsport? Why or why not?
Yes, I think it would be a good idea to move more cargo in and out of the port of Searsport as long as the infrastructure is there to handle it. One of the port should certainly be being used to capacity, but if we start bringing in very large amounts of cargo into the port as it is now, this is something that I wonder about. Where is it going to go? We have the only road going through Searsport to take things out by truck is 1 lane in each direction. We have rail service, yes, but it's one railroad track that goes through people's backyards, and road crossings that don't have the proper barriers and so on. If they're going to bring large amounts of cargo in, more planning has to go into what will be done with it when it gets there. That can be done. We can expand the rail access and so on, but it needs to be planned out. We can't just willy-nilly say we're going to be bringing a lot of things in here if we don't know what they're going to do with them. Thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely. Searsport is called Searsport because it's a port. It's a major port. We have a major cargo handling facility down there. I've had the opportunity to be given a tour of the facilities. I think if we're going to increase cargo coming in and out, we need to make sure that the railroad is able to handle it, and that hopefully as much of it as possible goes on to the railroads. And also, security is a definite concern, so I know Homeland Security already takes an interest in the ports, so I think our town should be working with Homeland Security to make the absolute best possible security for that port, and that we should make full utilization of it. We won't be expanding it beyond the areas, because it's almost built out to its areas, so whatever it can handle, I think, as long as it's good containers and that type of cargo, we should encourage it, especially if it brings jobs to our area.
Thank you. I think this question has been answered to my satisfaction. I'm going to read it anyway. And if you think there's something you need to add to it, you can all do that. Do you support expansion at Mack Point? And I think that's sort of answered by what you just said, and development on Sears Island. And we were talking about the Sears Island development for a Marine base before, so are you comfortable with? Okay. All right, now I think we're starting with you again, Meredith? Yes. Okay. A year ago, Searsport spent $7,500 on a consultant to create an economic development plan. Was it worth it? And should we couple on economic development efforts with Belfast?
Well, I was disappointed in the results that we got for the money we spent for the consultant. I didn't think that worked out very well for the town. The idea that we do need to invest in this, and we do need ideas and to find ways to bring the town together and get us all pulling in the same direction, that's worth spending money on. I'm not opposed to the use of consultants. I think that we kind of rushed into that, and the town chose an individual that was very divisive just by his history here in the town. We certainly need, in our comprehensive plan, and also in our planning and our working together, to try to take steps toward economic development that will bring people together and not divide them. I say this all the time, everybody in Searsport basically wants the same thing. We need to bring jobs in here, we need development, we need to expand our tax base, but it has to be done in a way that is considerate, that doesn't scare the people who have businesses and homes here already, and scare them into a defensive posture. We need to find ways to work together and to bring people together.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you. I didn't see a lot of results from the consultant that the town hired. I think one of the first things we need to do is reinvigorate the Economic Development Committee. We've had a lot of people on that committee that's worked very hard over the years, but I think it probably needs a nice fair section of business and residents, and so that it's locally driven. I will state again that I think we need land rezoned in the town, and it doesn't have to be at Mack Point. It shouldn't be at Mack Point. We need business park set out somewhere in this town. It doesn't have to be right on Route 1 either, as long as it has good road access. We need a land set aside for business park, and we need land set aside for light industry in appropriate areas of the town. And then we need a strong economic development committee. And yes, I think we should work with Belfast. They're our our big brother next door, and we may be able to get some good things that would work in both towns.
Thank you. Chris?
I guess hindsight being 20/20 and looking back on it, $7,500 is a lot of money for not a lot of results. You've got an economic development committee, but I noticed the other night there was made mention that, well, we haven't met for a while. Well, an economic development committee, I would think that you would want to meet as often as possible if that's what your goal is. And I think it's just more than you go on the website and it says we are open for business. Well, what do you mean we're open for business? What does that mean? I look at that and you click on it and that automatically takes you to the wonderland. We're open for business. I don't buy into that. I think that there has to be some follow through. You can't just say it. You have to do it. You have to be proactive. You cannot be reactive. I just know from being in business, I have to stay on top of everything all the time. I have to be relentless about it. And I guess that's the approach that I would take, not to certainly be proactive rather than reactive. Can't be done in this time and age, these days. What with the advent with the internet, information is moving so fast. Just as for instance, we're buying our vehicles on a smartphone going down the road. And it blows my mind, and we're selling vehicles on the internet to all over the United States, and when I'm at an auction in Boston selling cars, they're bidding on them from the Middle East, and you're like, well, where did that car go? Well, that went to a bidder in Nigeria. You have to stay ahead of the curve rather than react. It's very important, and it was hard for me to do. I'm 55 years old, and thank God I've got two sons that work with me that tell me, hey, I had the flip phone and I thought that was the cat's meow, and they got the smartphone, and I said, nah, I'm not doing that. That ain't ever gonna take off. Well, guess what? It did. Guess who was wrong? I was, but that's okay. I've got one now. Thank you.
Okay. And Mark, let's see. If you have a large number, like 100 more residents who are against a project that you believe in, what would you do?
That's a hard question. Well, I would.
It is. It is.
I would. I've based all the committees that I've served on and boards in this town, and when I'm running for selectman, that I'm going to listen to all sides of the issue. I may not agree with everybody on every issue, but I'm certainly going to take all sides' point of view, and it may come that we come to a compromise. I may soften my view one way and go toward some of those 100 residents, and maybe I can get them to soften their view a little bit and go towards some of the other side. But I think most of our past problems and present problems are that we get stuck right on it and we're not going to move an inch one way or the other, and there always has to be some compromise for the good of the town.
No, I would not agree with. No, that's not true. I would love to listen to everybody's perspective, because I think that from listening to somebody else's perspective, I know lots of times that I've gone in, now this is the way it has to be done. Well, that's not always true. It's not always true. And I may learn something from somebody else, and oftentimes that has happened, and I've kind of thought about it afterwards. I wanted to be right so badly that I was willing to just, put my feet down and go, that's it, that's just how it's going to be. But, something that's not good for anybody and for any business, that's for sure. I would love to sit down and see somebody else's perspective, because I think that you can gain a lot from that. I'd be willing to do that. Yep, thank you.
Meredith?
I like Chris's answer. One of the things that I've tried to do in the 3 years that I've been on the board is to go out and actively seek ideas and opinions from other people. Not because I'm looking for people who agree with me, but I'm actually looking for ways to expand my view of things. I don't know everything, and a few of us do. But from listening to people, as both Mark and Chris said, that you find the avenues to compromise that will work for everyone. Because we are a very diverse town, and a lot of the progress that we make, the things that we need to do in order to bring opportunity and prosperity to our town, is going to involve getting people together and getting people to give a little and take a little. And as I said, the willingness to listen and the willingness to pay attention and try to truly hear what the other person is saying, not what they're saying, but what they mean, is an essential quality to being able to move things forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now we'll start with Chris. And actually, this question says, to begin with Mr. Colby, have Mr. Bradstreet go second and have Meredith go third. So we will do that. They're very particular. They're very particular. Okay. And here's the question. What are the duties of a selectman, and what do you propose to do to improve the quality of the town and life for the town's taxpayers?
I think the duty of the selectman is to be an advocate for the people of the town, to listen to everybody's point of view, and to take the majority of the point of view and to move that forward. And what was the second part? I'm sorry.
No.
Was the...
And what do you propose to do to improve the quality of the town and life for the town's taxpayers?
You know, I'd like to think that I could bring some friendliness to the town and some personality to the town, quite frankly. Pretty friendly guy. And, you know, we can open some doors and go from there. As for economic, you know, I'm all about economic development because I am a business person. That's just who I am. That's what I do. I've got a couple of businesses that we're going to open this year, as a matter of fact. Not big businesses, but businesses that will employ people, and I think that's what's important too. Currently, we employ 11 people, and you know what? If I've got 15 people, if I've got 20 people on the rolls, that means that, quite frankly, that my business is bigger. It's making more money. It's going to have a bigger tax base, you know, for the town. So, and that's how I would contribute to the town.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, well, serving on the Board of Selectmen is not a one-person show. There's five selectmen who have to work closely together in meetings and in order to get things done to better the town. You got to listen to people that may have very differing opinions, different attitudes on things. You got to always work for the best of the town, and you have to work under the legal ordinances, which doesn't always mean that you can just say, well, the majority rules, because you have to work within the state and town ordinances in order to get things done. And you know, my position would always be to look at everything before it's done to make sure that it's beneficial to the taxpayer and that we can get the most service without increasing taxes. And economic development, of course, is one major key in that we need more development. But right now we have to work with what we have here in the town and do the best we can.
Thank you. Meredith?
Yes. What Mark said about it being 5 people that's exactly it. And I think one of the good things about the Board of Selectmen that's just kind of built into the system is that there are 5 people who bring different experience, different strengths and weaknesses to the table, and that among 5 people working cooperatively, which the Board of Selectmen in the time that I've been on it, are willing to listen to each other and work cooperatively. Very rarely does somebody stamp their foot and say, I'm not going there. But the obligations and the duties of the Board of Selectmen are really to oversee the well-being of the town, to consider how their money is spent, to consider where things need to be done and where it's best just to back off and leave it alone, to work cooperatively with each other, to listen to people, to be willing to discuss, and to treat confidentiality appropriately. It is a group effort, and I think having diversity on the board is important, as it is having people who are willing to listen and work together.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go back to our regular order. Start with you, Meredith. If you had a chance between a big box retailer and several smaller retail stores, which would you choose?
I would choose the several smaller retail stores for the reason that a big box retailer does tend to have a harmful effect or a depressing effect on many, many small businesses. They may cause it, for example, there are many things that Tozier sells that you probably would be able to go and find a larger selection in a big box store. And if you want a big box store, they're not that far away. But I think to protect the smaller businesses, I would rather see smaller retail businesses in our town than one gigantic one.
Thank you. Mark?
Well, of course, as always, I'd prefer that I'm a small businessman. My wife and I have run a small business in this town for close to 20 years. We love small businesses. We need a mixture of businesses. I would figure that generally Belfast is going to be the closest big town where you're going to get the bigger stores, and that we're going to get we need a mixture of smaller business. We've got an application for a small business to come into town right now that will serve, I'm sure, a need that this town has. We need hardware stores. We need, all types of small businesses. But I wouldn't definitely not turn away if a properly credentialed big store came in and we had zoned land for it. We would definitely, by law, we'd have to take a look at it and see if it fits in with our comprehensive plan and zoning ordinances.
Chris?
Excuse me. No, I'm all about small businesses, being from a small business background, of course. I think that the chance of a big box store coming to Searsport is very slim because you just don't have the people here to support that. So I don't think that that's a huge concern. But wouldn't it be nice to have everything up and down Route 1, all the small businesses, growing and thriving? Absolutely. And they're going to have a better job quality, for the people around here. So small business, that's what I'm on board with. Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, Mark? The Board of Selectmen and Planning Board have a lot of power in this town. They both seem at times rude and unresponsive to citizens' concerns. How would you deal with this?
The chair of each of these, of the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board, has quite a bit of power and say over how that board operates. I think customer service, just like when we're running our small businesses, when I'm up at my auction house, I want to serve the customer. I want the customer to come back. We need to think about that when we're running these boards and committees too. That the customers out there, that's the public, the citizen, maybe somebody from another town that's come here to apply for a permit, and we should be open and listen to what they have to say and make sure that we fairly weigh out the options of what they want to do and give them every possible consideration within our ordinances to to make what they want to do happen. If it doesn't meet our ordinances, it doesn't mean we can say yes to everything, but we should certainly be polite. We should certainly listen to anybody that comes in here and wants to speak during our open to the public sessions.
Thank you, Chris.
I guess mine is still on. I never turned it off, but thank you to my wife for bringing that to my attention from time to time. I appreciate that. I think it boils down to one thing. It's called respect. I've been watching a few of the meetings online, through streaming, and I get a sense of, maybe some people are just being blown off. And I don't like to see that. Shame on you for doing that. That just should not take place. That doesn't take place in my workplace. I don't condone that in any way because, I've had issues in the past that have not been addressed, and it upset me. And when I see that person in that video, kind of being blown off, I've had that feeling before, and that's not a good feeling at all. So, it boils down to respect, and something, that comes from the top down. So whoever's at the top needs to pull somebody aside, away from everybody else, and say, look, this isn't right. You can't do business this way. So that's where I stand on that.
Thank you. Meredith?
I agree with whoever wrote that question because I have noticed that very often when people come before, I know the select board, I attend many of the planning board meetings, and I agree, if that was the tone of the question, that very often people are not heard, or it's one of the reasons I think more people don't attend meetings is because they stand up and speak and it says, thank you very much, next, there's not a lot of response and a lot of, I think people very often feel that they're just wasting their time. I have always made an effort to listen. I don't sit there and sign papers when people are speaking. I make a serious attempt to listen and pay attention and respond. But I do feel that this is a problem. It's uncomfortable to criticize individuals, and I don't want to do that, but I do think that this is a problem that needs to be addressed. And I think that's about as much as I want to say.
Thank you. Okay. Time to start with you, Chris. Properties in Searsport seem to be worth less than they were 5 years ago after the recession had happened. Why are Searsport properties losing value when other towns to the west are gaining?
Well, look at that, I'm still on, that's beautiful. I think the fact that it's stagnant growth. There's not enough going on here. I remember back in the day that, you could hardly find a place in Searsport that was for sale. And, if you did, you had to jump on it because it wasn't on the market very long. Now, back in '08, when the market crashed, I was in a position where, my son and I were sitting there and going, Dad, what are we going to do? There's nothing going on. We've been looking at each other for 2 months. The phone hasn't rung. What are we going to do? And I said, well, we can do one of two things. We can either die or we can build a new building. Let's build that new building. Well, and I did some collaboration with some buddies of mine in the automobile business and got some statistics, and they said, well, if you build it, they will come. So I said, okay, here we go, let's build it. At the time, labor costs were down, material costs were down, we built it, and they did come. But it was a very, very long process, and there was a lot of stuff up for sale. Well, I had a little bit of I would like to think business savvy, so we bought those places too. And we rebuilt them, and I've had them on the market for some time. They haven't moved, and we're renting them right now. And until we get something going here, something's got to be kicked in the butt, and we got to make some hard decisions, and they're probably not going to be popular decisions, but some hard decisions need to be made by 5 people on a board, and a city manager, and committees, to get all on the same page. It goes right back to the division. So, and until we do that, nothing's going to happen.
Thank you. Meredith?
I hear all the time in Searsport, well, businesses don't want to come to Searsport because Searsport always says no to everything. And we're not friendly to business. And there may be some truth in that. But I think Searsport is certainly not friendly to residents. In recent years, the town has not been as considerate of residents as they should have been. Things have been allowed to come in and damage people's property values. I would be very reluctant or very careful about buying a home here in Searsport right now because of some of the things that have happened. The concerns and the respect for residents who have invested, in many cases, their life savings in a home here, and have seen their homes devalued because of decisions the town have made that are not friendly to homeowners. I think that's, if homes are selling well in other towns around us and they're not selling well here in Searsport, we have to really be honest with ourselves about what we're doing and not doing in allowing businesses that are disturbing to residences to come in and not allowing residents ample opportunity to speak and to ask questions and to participate in the decision. It doesn't surprise me that it's hard to sell a home in Searsport.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, thank you for the question. I can truthfully say that the planning board has bent over backwards to approve applications if they conform to the ordinance that we have to work with. If the ordinances need to be changed, then then the comprehensive plan is going to have to take a look at them and maybe strengthen them in areas. I don't want to mention any particular cases, but there's one business that was cited in a residential zone, and I truthfully went against the planning board because I felt that business was not a bad business to be in our town. It just belonged in a commercial district, and I steadfastly voted against it, but the majority of the planning board approved it. So there are just, that's why you have 5 members. There's differences of opinions, and they interpreted the comprehensive plan differently than I interpreted it. So it may be that we're going to have to strengthen the comprehensive plan to make sure that we get the businesses we want, but we certainly don't want to put out the attitude that we are unfriendly to business, and I don't think we are unfriendly to business. We had to turn down one major application in here, the elephant in the room, but that took, a year of deliberations, and we certainly, I know as I and the rest of the members of that board went in there with an open view on that. We weren't for or against it. We listened to all the testimony. We listened to residents of this town and many other towns that came here to testify for and against. In the end, we decided it just didn't meet our ordinances, and it was sent packing. As far as property not selling as well in this town as other towns, I can't honestly answer that. I'm not a real estate broker, nor do I pretend to be one. I think the market is slumped. We've approved a lot of businesses in this town that come and they're here 6 months and they go out of business, and then we get an application on that same property over again. So I know there's businesses that just aren't making it. Thank you.
Thanks. Meredith, Given that free speech is everyone's right and privilege, do you think the people of our town, and especially the elected officials, should take guidance from anonymous sources who mail out faulty information?
No, I don't. Anybody who is anonymous when they speak out, you have to be very careful. If you don't know who's telling you something, you have to be very careful to evaluate what it is. Free speech is, of course, important, and everybody has the right to it, as long as you're not breaking the law or slandering people or circulating false information. I have no problem with free speech, but no, I think we hear things all the time, but we have to be very careful when we hear anything, what we believe. We see advertisements on TV, and we think, maybe that's not quite accurate or not quite honest what they're saying there, but we all have to use judgment when we evaluate things. And I think I know what the person who wrote that question is thinking about. And in that particular case, it's a matter of looking at the facts and saying, is it true or is it a lie?
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, I probably have a pretty good idea of what the person who wrote the card is thinking about, because I think we've seen some things in our mailboxes, and I would have much preferred to see the group identify themselves, but they certainly have every right to send the information out, and I think the boards have to take a look at it and determine is it accurate or not. It may be things that we need to look into. As far as receiving information, I guess I'm sort of on both sides of this issue, because I can certainly see that somebody's not going to want to expose themselves. Maybe they run a business in town. They're worried about having public opinion against them if they speak up on an issue or something, and they may want to give somebody information. We just have to weigh the information ourselves and decide, do we feel this is accurate information or not? A lot of things that come in aren't, and some things are.
Chris?
Same thing. I guess you'd have to take a look at it and put numbers to it to see if it is accurate before you made a decision there. As for the free speech thing, I think that's important. I'm not so sure that I would have remained anonymous. I think that doesn't lend a lot of credibility. Just from my perspective, if I send something out to you, I would have my name on it. I wouldn't have any problem with that. So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Mark? Many in our town seem to believe that the port is the key to economic growth in our town. If Searsport is to become more industrialized, how do we protect residential property values? How do we protect residential properties near the port? We had a buffer of trees that was recently lost. Was this good?
Was that one to me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Well, I sort of feel like the port we have a three-legged town here, tourism, business, and industry, so the port is one of those important three legs. And the planning board needs to do very due diligent looking at these applications that come in to see if it will fit. I honestly, somebody dropped the ball there on that buffer zone, because I'm on the planning board, and I'd have to go back and look at that application carefully. That I don't believe that buffer zone should have been removed, and I'm very certain that the planning board did put a buffer zone in there, and now when you drive down Route 1, you can have a good view of everything that's down there. Whether you enjoy seeing that view or not, that's up to the individual person, but we need buffer zones in our ordinances, and we need a enforcement arm to make sure that if somebody violates those buffer zones when they're put in there, that there's consequences. And apparently right now there doesn't seem like there's a lot of consequence for what's been happening over there. But I think we need development away from the port. Everything doesn't have to be right at that port. That port should be marine-related activities. We need other areas for lighter type of businesses that's going to help our tax base.
Chris?
I guess I'm wondering if I should be reading something into these questions. And I don't know for sure what it was meant for, but I'm thinking that it must be meant for main materials. Is that correct? So, let me tell you, I am close personal friends with Pat Thibodeau and Steve Clesham. However, if they did something wrong, they should be held accountable. If the town did something wrong and didn't, in their comprehensive plan, have a buffer in there, shame on them. They should have had that. And I would tell Patrick to his face, listen, and I've said this to him, and I said, listen, just put some trees up there. Just do something to kind of lessen what it looks like. Because, it's not handsome. I mean, let's face it, it's not handsome. But is it by the rules? Well, if it's by the rules that the comprehensive plan has set forth, then we have to go with that.
Okay. Meredith? Sure. Many in our town seem to believe that the port is the key to economic growth in our town. If Searsport is to become more industrialized, how do we protect residential property values? How do we protect properties near the port? We had a buffer of trees that was recently lost. Was that good?
Well, the port certainly is an important part of Searsport's future growth. It's part of the town. It always has been. The thing I think we all know what we're talking about here with the industrialization of the port and the main materials issue. This is an issue where there are rules in place. Perhaps they were not spelled out so carefully, but there are rules, there are ordinances in effect that should help and protect the property owners down there, but they are not being enforced. Everybody's passing the buck. The town is saying, well, it's up to the DEP to do it. The DEP says, well, it's up to somebody else. And ultimately, everybody says, oh, well, you have to take it up with the code enforcement officer. Well, the code enforcement officer only works for Searsport for 2 or 3 days a week, and he has had recently all these things piled on top of him. This is beyond anything that he can deal with. It just seems that everybody is passing the buck on this, and I really feel that needs to stop, because somebody needs to take a stand and put their foot down. I believe that, well, I personally feel that the planning board has adequate cause to reopen the permit that was given to Main Materials, to allow and to reevaluate it. That would give an opportunity for the people who do live near Main Materials, now that they know what that business is going to do. It would give them an opportunity to come forward and ask questions and voice their concerns. They never had that opportunity before, because the information that was given to the town before the business became operational was not accurate. And so people didn't know what was coming in there, and people didn't know how much noise there would be, or the lights and the other things that have been disturbing to the people who lived close to that business. I think in view of the fact that there was information that was inaccurate or that was missing during the application process, that it needs to be reopened and reevaluated to give people a chance to give the citizens of Searsport a chance to participate in the decision.
Thank you. Chris?
Yes.
If you had to cut the town budget to prevent an increase in property tax, where would you cut?
Well, first off, still on. First off, probably wouldn't be looking at cutting. I would be looking to make more money. You can do one of two things. You can either cut expenses, or you can look for ways to make more money. I, myself, would look for ways to make more money. So in order to do that, you need to expand upon the port. You need to get a larger tax base. If I had to cut the budget, I looked on some of the warrants here. I would, the only way to really do that would be, I think a popular thing is the police department, because you're at $300 or close to $300,000. I think that's the biggest thing that you could cut right off. But as for doing that, I'd be looking to look for ways to make more money rather than to cut what we currently have.
Thank you. Meredith?
Well, yes, a budget problem, it's always better to find ways to make more money than to cut expenses, unless the expenses are truly outrageous. We just finished on the Board of Selectmen going over the budget and looking for places where things could be cut. There are lots of little places to cut. The town needs so many things, and there are so many things that are underfunded. I agree that the police department is an area of the town which is overfunded and out of proportion with the size of the town and the budget of the town. That would be a very good place to cut, and I think it could be done in ways that would not compromise public safety. But the thing that's tough is that the biggest part of our budget is the schools, and you can't really cut there because most of that is mandated by the state, mandated by the federal government. There's nothing there that we can really, there's not a lot there that we can control. And in looking at the part of the budget that we can control, there are not a lot of places to trim, except I would say the police department.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, I will agree with Meredith that, I believe 69% of our tax budget goes to the school district, and the Board of Selectmen doesn't have a lot of say over that, and as Meredith said, a lot of it's state mandated, so we're not going to find a lot of cuts there. I don't see where we're going to be able to cut any one great big, budget out of it. We can look at the police department. We also need to look at everything in town, trim a little here and there, any place we can to, as Chris said, the alternative is to raise money. Well, I don't want to raise money by raising taxes. That's the one place we don't want to raise that money at. And we need to look at, we need that growth in the town. It doesn't necessarily have to be industrial growth. We need business and residential growth. But we need to look at that now before we get down to the crisis. Because when we get down to budget time, we can't raise that money through economic growth in the 3 months we're going to need to, before we present a budget. So that Economic Development Committee needs to be an ongoing program where we're trying to get, things in here that'll help the town. But I guess if I'm selected to be on the board, we're going to have to look at every area of the budget to see where we can make the necessary cuts, and it's probably going to be a lot of small cuts here and there rather than just chopping one big area off. I think everyone still wants their road plowed when the snow falls, and they want those potholes filled up and all the other vital services that we depend on for the town. But we certainly need to look at making sure we're doing it the most efficient way we can. We also need to look at seeing whatever monies that we could possibly get from state and federal grants, such as money from Homeland Security, because we have a major port here. There's different avenues that we need to be looking at, and Economic Development Committee needs to be looking at. Thank you.
Okay, the next question, part of it has already been answered, I think. It's, do you support cutting the police department or any other emergency service, and why? So I think you've answered them. We're starting with Meredith. That's my question? Yes, and I think probably answered the police department, but they also are wondering about other emergency services.
The the security and the safety and the well-being of the people in town can't be compromised by cuts. The ambulance service, the fire department, those are primarily funded or staffed by volunteers, and I don't see any way that those services could be economized on or cut in any way. If anything, I think the fire department is always looking for additional volunteers. They feel that they're a little understaffed at the moment. That's interesting, that question, because I had heard some rumors around town that somebody was talking about cutting all emergency services or even eliminating them, and I don't know who on earth, where that came from, or who thought that was going on. I haven't heard or seen anything that validates that, and I'm certainly not in favor of anything like that.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, our town has a lot of older population. I know I got 2 kids here on each side of me that are running, but, when I call that ambulance or that fire department, I want to make sure it's right here in town and it gets here fast. And I think we all want the same thing. So I don't think there's a whole lot of meat there to cut on those bones. And I don't know about the police department. I do think we probably should appoint a committee to take a hard look at our police department and get comparisons. Oh, I guess I'm out of time. My name went down. Just to see how we're doing against other towns and, a price comparison between our department, how much manpower or people power we need to run that department, as opposed to, what services we would have from the sheriff's department. I certainly like having that police officer right close by when I want to call him. But in these hard times, everything's on the table, and I think we do need to look at those services and make sure that they're cost effective for the number of residents that we have in this town.
Chris?
I guess you need to ask yourself, at what point is the breaking point? Now, there has to be a point where, well, we just can't afford to do this. If you want to cut the budget with the police department. I know it has been going up historically over the years. We all see, more people, more cruisers. They're at the school. They're everywhere. I don't know if they're trying to justify their existence or whether it's really needed. I, for one, this is just my own personal opinion. Do I think that I need a police department here in Searsport? I don't think so. But that's my opinion. But if the people think that they do, then I would listen to the people and the majority of the people. And that's, we're in a democracy, and democracy rules. Emergency services, ambulatory care. Just the other night, Wednesday night, I was with, I call her my grandmother. She's not my grandmother. She's my wife's grandmother, who's 94 years old. And she didn't feel well, loss of breath and everything. And we called them, and they were there within, 5 or 10 minutes. And, for a person that's older, that's got to be some security. To be able to call that number and know that someone's going to be there, okay? We really haven't had a lot of, what do I want to say, any major crime that I can think of here in Searsport lately, so I'm not so sure that we need the police as much as we need the ambulance, but that's just my take on things. I certainly wouldn't want to get rid of the ambulatory care, but the police department, I would take a hard look at that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've answered this question. Do you support the town's emergency responders in their respective departments? And I think you mentioned fire and ambulance, and you've talked about the police. Okay. Now we start with Mark. Are you in favor of replacing the current fire station in the north end of town and increasing EMS capability there.
Yes, I've been in that facility, and it's not a very good facility. It's the half of town that lives in North Searsport, I think, deserves a better facility than the one that's currently there. On the other hand, they don't need a $1 million facility, that would be better than the one we have down here. We need something that's adequate, and is usable and is cost-effective to build and maintain, whether it's rehabilitating the one that's there or moving to, that other piece of property, which I believe the town still owns, that was bought for that purpose. I think we need to come in with a cost-effective facility to serve the part of the town that's in North Searsport. And also, both departments are back up for the other parts of town, so a strong department in either section of town helps everybody.
I had an opportunity last week, and I met with AJ up there at the fire station because I wanted to see what they were talking about. And the building certainly is in disrepair. I also looked at the blueprints that he had there, and I thought that, I built a building that was 3,000 square feet, and I know what it costs, pretty much per square foot in order to put a building up. I mean, basically, you've got a warehouse with some offices in there and some petitions. And I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, $130 or $40 per square foot. Was that correct? I think a building like that, you ought to be able to build start to finish $60 to $70 a square foot. Having said that, by regular code, now I suppose there are different codes in a municipal facility that the cement has to be thicker, it has to have more steel in it, it has to structural rigidity. I don't know that. That's something that I would have to look into to see if it would be more per square foot. And I also recommended to him that, in any good negotiating, everybody wins. So if you're going to go in with something that's 1.2 million, go in a little higher. Go in a little higher at 1.2, and let's get something pared down to what everybody can live with. I mean, can you live with a building that's $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 building? I think that you can. And so I would be in support of a facility up there, but certainly not of the magnitude that it is at right now. So.
Meredith?
About a year ago or a little more, I went up and looked at the North Searsport Fire Station also, and it's in terrible shape. And it's not really adequate to fit in. They can't even get the ambulance inside, or at least they couldn't last I saw. But there has been a very good idea put forward, and I think it offers hope. The problem is just having the money to do it. And what we were talking before about, where would we trim the budget? There are lots of things that we'd love to have, and we have to do the best we can with the money that we've got. But an awesome suggestion that was made, and I believe James Gilway was the one who brought it up. We do have that piece of property up in North Searsport where the fire station was going to be built. And we have two buildings that need to be replaced. We need the town garage replaced. That is also falling apart in very bad condition. And the North Searsport Fire Station. It's less expensive to build one big building than two small ones. And the suggestion has been made that a combined building that would house the town garage and the North Searsport Emergency Services would be less expensive to build than the two separate buildings. And I think that's very worth pursuing, because it gives us an opportunity to, at a more reasonable cost, to replace two buildings that are falling apart. And it would just be better for the town's equipment, for the town's employees, and for the safety of our citizens.
Thank you. Okay. Chris, your attitude and plan, why are there little restrictions on sales signs on businesses such as the fireworks shop? It says your attitude and plan, why are there little restrictions on sale signs on businesses such as the fireworks shop? I assume the person wants to know why there are no restrictions or very few restrictions on signs on businesses, and do you have a thought about that or a plan? I assume they want to know what you think about that and what your plan would be.
Well, I don't know what they're talking about, because I certainly had a restriction on my signage at my business. So I guess I don't get it. I mean, it's in the, when I went before the board, I had a certain number of square footage on the sign, so I got no idea. I'd like to have more signs. You know, I'm a car dealer, for God's sakes. I want all the signs I can get. I want everyone to stop there, so. But I was disappointed that I couldn't have more signage, so I guess I don't know.
Meredith?
I think signage is actually,
No, it's
oh, okay, all right, I didn't know. Okay, I know that signage on businesses is controlled by the planning board. There are ordinances and regulations on how big and how close to the road and how much light and all that kind of thing. I didn't entirely understand the question either, what the questioner is looking for. But if somebody is dissatisfied with the kinds of signs that are permitted, that's something that needs to be taken up with the ordinance review committee or with the planning board. I'm sure Mark can really elucidate on this.
I think the question is kind of hard to understand, but I think they're talking about temporary signs that's being used as an advertising device at the fireworks store. I'm on the planning board, and that business met the sign requirements just like every other business. We have size and setback and lighting restrictions on signs. We don't regulate, temporary signs. So I think they're probably talking about those banners, and we can't go down there and say, well, we don't like your business, so you can't have all those banners. That Chris can have up to his business, or I can put in front of my business. They're not permanent signs, so we don't regulate those with any, as long as they're not obstructing traffic, they're not blinking lights, or they're doing anything that creates a hazard to the traffic going up and down the highway. We don't regulate those, so businesses are free to use those, and they're not. I can tell you one thing, that's not the only business in town that's using banners and things to try to attract traffic in a very economically hard time. So,
Thank you. This question is just for Meredith to answer. You have been quoted as saying that you would cut and eliminate all emergency services in town. How would you replace those services without adding burden to neighboring towns' emergency services?
Well, first of all, I have never said, nor would I want, to eliminate emergency services in Searsport. As Mark pointed out before, we are an older population. We need to have an adequate ambulance service. We certainly need a fire department, and we've invested a lot into our equipment, the fire engines and so on. I have heard this. A couple of people told me that they'd seen this on the internet. Somebody was saying that there were, it's interesting they were asking me this question. Somebody was saying that a small group of people wanted to eliminate emergency services in Searsport. And if that's true, I'd like to know who they are. But yes, I have always been in favor of reducing the expense of our police department, because I think with the size of our town, it is out of proportion with the size of the town and with the town's budget. beyond that, I have no idea where that story came from.
Okay, thank you. And, let's see, and it's time to start with you again anyway. Does the Board of Selectmen choose the members of the Planning Board, and the Selectmen have term limits? Do the Planning Board members have term limits?
That's for me?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think they have term limits. I mean, Bruce Probert served on the planning board for decades. They serve a particular term on the Board of Selectmen. It's 3 years, and then you run for re-election. As far as I know, there's no limit on how many times you can run for re-election. As far as I know, there's no limit on. There doesn't appear to be any limit on the planning board either. So I'm not really sure I understand the question.
Well, they want to do, does the Board of Selectmen choose the members of the Planning Board? And they're
Yes.
wondering about term limits for the Planning Board.
The planning board is formed by people who come forward and volunteer to be on the planning board. And when there's a vacancy on the planning board, the Board of Selectmen evaluate the volunteers that have put their names forward and vote on one that they feel is appropriate to put on the planning board. At the moment, the planning board is fully booked, and there are 2 alternates who one of them will fill the next vacancy that comes up on the planning board, and then presumably the planning board will ask us to appoint another alternate.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Mark?
Yes. Well, I know there's not, the Grim Reaper is the term limits on the boards and committees in this town. But the Board of Selectmen have a waiting list of names of people that are interested in serving on these committees. There's a form downstairs that anyone can pick up that wants to be on a board or committee, and they can put their name in and list their interest, and then the Board of Selectmen will do due diligence to appoint somebody to that board that can work with the existing members and keep that board running. I believe it's, Board of Selectmen, of course, is a 3-year term, and I believe the Planning Board term is 5 years, and the Board of Selectmen could not renew somebody's appointment to that board if they so choose. At the end of that, they have to, the town manager brings that name back up to the Board of Selectmen, and they could choose not to reappoint somebody to that board. You see a lot of older people on these boards because they're just, to be honest with you, there just isn't a whole lot of people applying to, to be on these boards. After DCP hearings, I'm not sure how many people want to be on the planning board, but, you're going to make the decision out there in a couple of weeks as to whether I stay on the planning board or go to the Board of Selectmen, so that's up to you.
Oops. Chris?
I don't know enough about that. I know what the duties of the planning board are, and that they do, I know what the selectmen's duties are and what that they do elect, but I don't know for what term limits. It's something I'm not familiar with. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Mark, what committees or volunteer work have you done for the town?
Well, my wife and I have lived in this town for close to 20 years. I think one of the first things I went on to in this town was I became an election clerk for the town when there was a funding shortage. Several years, about 2002, I've been doing that ever since. I got onto the Comprehensive Plan Committee. At the time, they were writing the comprehensive plan for the town and helped with that. I've served on the Historic Preservation Committee. I've been on a number of things. I've been active in the Historical Society, which isn't a direct committee of the town, but I've been active in different things in the town, so I've gotten a good feel for how the town works, and I've served as a town councilman in another town, and I have served as a moderator. I'm certified town moderator, and I've served in this town and in Frankfurt. So that's pretty much my background.
Thank you. Chris?
I'm at a disadvantage here. I have not served on any committee in town. The only thing that I have done, and is paid a lot of taxes for a long time, I guess. I guess I did my part there. I have donated money through my business through different organizations from town, and that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you. Meredith?
Well, I've served obviously on the Board of Selectmen for 3 years, and I've also served on the Ordinance Review Committee. Other than that, I have not served on so many boards and committees, but I do attend meetings of many boards and committees, the library board and so on. I don't attend every meeting, but I do go to them just to stay on top of what's going on and stay informed about the issues that confront the town. I've gone and sat in on some meetings of the water district. I've gone to sit in on meetings of the head of the Bay Group to try to keep myself as informed as possible about what is going on, who's doing what about it, and so on.
Thank you. Okay. Chris, can you clearly express your opinions about issues even if you are in the minority?
No. No, that's as clear as I can be. No, yeah, absolutely I can.
Okay.
Yeah. Even if I am in the minority.
Right.
Well, it's sometimes hard for me to do. It's, I get a little emotional about things, and I get very passionate about things. And, but can I do it clearly? Absolutely I can.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you. Meredith?
I'm not a confrontational person. I'm more of a negotiator than a confrontational person. However, anybody who's been watching the Board of Selectmen meetings over the last 3 years know that I'm not shy about taking a stand when I think it's important. I do stand up for what I believe. I'm not easily intimidated.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, I'm an auctioneer, so I have a big mouth. Yeah, I've taken stands on issues. I think you could ask the last couple of chairs of the planning board. I haven't always agreed with the planning board, and I've expressed my opinion. I think that's healthy on a board that has a number of people on it. So definitely, I will always state my opinion. But I'm consider myself a negotiator too, and I'm there to learn. I can have an opinion on something, and it may change. It may be altered by when I hear testimony from the public. The last thing you want to do is sit there at a board meeting and not pay any attention to what people are saying out there. That's what we're here for. We listen to what people say, and they come for a reason. They want to persuade somebody on their opinion, and sometimes their opinion is better than the opinion I walked in the door with. So definitely I'm opening to listen to everybody's opinion. Thank
you. Meredith, how would you encourage greater participation by Searsport citizens in the deliberations of the Board of Selectmen? Do you have any ideas about how we can put forward our ideas and concerns and expect a transparent and open discussion?
Well, I think people are not likely to come and participate if they don't feel that they're listened to and that the questions or the concerns that they bring before the board are not taken seriously. That it's important. The town would work so much better and would be so much more responsive if more people did take part. But I understand why many people are shy about doing it. Well, and now, of course, they can sit at home and watch it on TV, which, if the weather is lousy, that's people would rather do that than come out in the snow. But I think the way that we're going to get more people to participate is to be more responsive to them when they come. I think that all boards and committees that have meetings that people attend should have at least 2 open to the public sessions. The Board of Selectmen does. I believe the Planning Board would benefit from 1 more. But that's up to them. But people participate and come out if they feel that it makes a difference, if they feel they're not being heard, if they feel they're not being listened to, if they feel they're just being brushed off, they're not going to come out. And it's very important to change that perception.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, I agree with Meredith 100%. The public that comes into our meetings, they're the customers. They're here. That's what we're here for. We're here to serve the residents of this town. We have meetings where we listen to residents that come here from other towns, and we certainly should be polite and listen to those residents too. But our primary concern is the residents of this town, and that's our job. We should be listening to. I think the Board of Selectmen could take the lead and tell other boards that serve at the Selectmen's pleasure, you need to open to the public. So I don't think that would be a large issue. I think that can be taken care of real easy with that. I think I'm able to listen to people. I serve on the Board of Auctioneers for the state, and we listen to cases where the public makes a complaint against auctioneers, and we have to listen to testimony from both sides, and then we have to make decisions. We have to carefully understand who's telling the truth and who isn't sometimes, and then we have to come to decisions. So I think I've had a lot of experience in that type of thing, and I think being polite and allowing the person that's speaking to hear what they say, but then as I say, I'm a certified town moderator, you also have to know when to put the gavel down and ask someone to wrap up and sit down, because you can't listen to the same repetitive testimony 6 times in a row. So you have to strike a balance, but you can definitely do it in a polite and careful manner.
Thank you. Chris?
Again, it all boils down to respect, and it starts from the top down. Everybody has to be heard in town. Okay, if they have an opinion, they deserve the respect. And from the towns, from the forefathers of the town, they need to listen. They are being paid by the people that is asking them, to listen to them and to lend an ear. I just know in my organization, if I have a rule that with everybody that, you listen to me and I'll listen to you. This is how it works. And sometimes people don't want to listen. They feel a need to talk, when I'm talking. And what happens in a case like that is they have to leave and I have to stay. So, sometimes you have to draw a hard line, but I think respect is certainly the number one thing there. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. And Mark, I'll start with you. What are you doing or have you done related to aging in Searsport, and what is your understanding of need? I assume they mean the need of aging, or the people that are aging in Searsport.
You're talking about residents that are aging in Searsport?
Yes, I assume that's what it means.
Well, we all seem to be doing that. I'm older than when we came to Searsport. That I think our ambulance and our EMT services, that they're vastly important to everyone in town, but particularly to people that are aging. So we need to make sure those services are up to snuff. We may need a program where we ask the where people can sign up and have the police department check in on them occasionally. If they're an elderly person and they may be homebound, there was a sad situation down at Wells where somebody was found, they'd been in a house 2.5 years and nobody noticed that they died. The town didn't even go check because they hadn't paid their tax bills. We don't want things like that happening here in Searsport. So I think we have a pretty good set of services here, but we may need to fine tune them where we can check on people.
Thank you. Chris?
Just based on the other night with the ambulatory care that, my grandmother got, I think it's top shelf. Absolutely, I do. You've got an aging population here. It's important to them. They pay taxes, so, ambulatory care should be number one, I think. And from every indication that I get, and firsthand information from seeing them, they were 100%, so.
Meredith?
That's a really interesting question. Gloria Young is here, and she and I met a couple of weeks ago with some representatives from a charity. I can't remember off the top of my head what the name of it was, but they are going around trying to get volunteer organizations set up in towns that will provide services to our aging population. And among those services would be a call-in service, for example, to keep track of older people who live by themselves and who their neighbor, especially in the winter, their neighbors may not see them outside for a while and may not think that that's unusual, but then only to come and find that they may have fallen in their house or had come to some mishap. And I know I have a reputation for being very critical of the police, but it was something I wanted to mention. Last year when we had so much snow, I have two neighbors who live very close to me who are older women who live by themselves. And I did see a police officer going around and checking on those two houses to make sure those two women were okay. And I was very pleased to see that. That's the kind of thing that we hope for from community policing. But there certainly are. Gloria and I have been talking about this, trying to get together a group of volunteers to start some of the programs that have worked in other towns that provide people to look in on the elderly people, to volunteer to give them rides when they need to go to the doctor or they need to go shopping. And there are a lot of things that have worked in other communities that we need to look at here in Searsport, see what we can do about that.
Thank you. That is the end of the questions. So now we're going to have each one of you have 2 minutes for a closing statement. And then when we're done with that, Jerry, also, anyone who has any questions about the school board can ask them, Jerry, or about anything about the school. And then that'll be it. So why don't we start? We started with you. Why don't we end with you for your 2 minutes, for your closing statement? Mm-hmm.
One of the things that, I had this great long thing written out that I wanted to make my opening statement, and I didn't get to finish it, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about was some of the things that I think really need improvement in Searsport, things that right now are not working. And one of them was mentioned by a number by both of the two gentlemen here, that one of the primary concerns of Searsport and everybody who lives here is our floundering efforts to get economic development going. We seem, we kind of take a survey and then everything, kind of dies, and then we hire a consultant and then everything fizzles out. So the lack of an active economic development department is really hurting us. We need to, the current department, the current committee hasn't met in a very long time, in years in fact, and I'm surprised because there are some very good people on that committee. It's not that that the people on the committee are lazy. I'm not really sure what went wrong with that, but, you know, it hasn't worked for a long time, so it's time to dissolve that. This is something that the Board of Selectmen have to do, and I have not been able to get a lot of support in trying to do this. To dissolve that committee and reappoint a committee, picking out people that are diverse. We need people from all parts of town. We need people who are running businesses and operating businesses in town and really understand what needs to be done and have good ideas. We need to have in order to not exacerbate the divisions in town, we have to make sure that the us and the thems are all represented on this committee, so nobody feels that something is going to be put over on them by the other guys. Anyway, that's something I didn't get to say before, but I have very much enjoyed serving on the Board of Selectmen. I hope I will be able to continue to serve. Both of the candidates who are running against me, I've been very impressed with what they've said today. They have good ideas, and I think they have the best interests of Searsport in mind. I do hope to be able to continue to serve. I have ideas. There are issues that I think need to be addressed that nobody is talking about. So I would ask for your vote, and I thank you very much for coming out and listening today, and have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, I want to thank everyone that's come out today to listen, and I hope we've given you some food for thought. I believe all of us that are sitting here are here for one purpose. We care for the town of Searsport, and we want to make the town of Searsport better. We're not running for any other purpose than that, and I believe we're all on the same page with that. I think the selectmen are already saving money because this room's cold. I feel I have a lot of experience that I can bring to the table here if I'm elected. You know, I've run a small business. I know what it is to meet a payroll and keep a business going and pay the property taxes and everything else that's involved. I've been heavily involved in the comprehensive plan. I've been on the planning board since 2007, and everyone knows all the things that's gone on there. I think I can work with and, both sides of the issue, liberal, conservative, we all need to come together, and I think I can bring those people together to work in the best interest of the town. I feel I've had a lot of experience in conducting meetings as a town moderator. I've conducted meetings here and in Frankfurt, and if you want to see an active meeting, go to Frankfurt. And I've served on that state. I've been serving on a state committee several years that hears cases, when somebody has a problem with an auctioneer, and we have to sit there and make decisions. So I've made a lot of decisions over the year, and if you decide to elect me to your as to be a selectman in this town, I think I can make the decisions that'll try to be in the best interest of the town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chris?
I feel very fortunate to be a part of Searsport, quite frankly. My wife grew up here. I grew up in Belfast. We were brought up 2 sons in and around the area. We have 4 grandchildren that attend Searsport schools. We've built a business that started, like I say, on a dirt lot, sold a few, got a little bigger, kept chipping away, and 16 years later, we're still in business. And I have both of my sons working for me. And, it's a good feeling going to work every day, leaving your house on one side of town, going to the other side of town and doing business and punching that clock. And, for that, I am very thankful. But on the other hand, I have a saying, if you keep on doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep on getting what you've been getting. And that is so very true. So, I'm looking to do my part, to change some things up. Not any secret. I realize I'm only one of 5 people, and you know, if I was elected. I guess I'm assuming I'm going to be, I guess. That's not right. But, you know, I can bring a lot to the table, a lot of business acumen to the table. You know, I feel like I have, you know, earned the degree in business by being in business. So, I'm looking for, I'm looking for an opportunity and looking for a vote. So, you know, there's going to, like I say, there's going to be some hard decisions that be made and some lines drawn, and we'll have to draw those lines. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry, does anyone have any questions about for Jerry? Or Jerry, do you have anything you wanted to say about the school board or anything?
I've spent a lot of time in the last several years keeping an eye on what's going on with the school district. I talk already on a regular basis with our other two representatives from Searsport, so I've already had a jump start on working with them, I guess you could say, or at least having conversation with them. So we're familiar with each other, and we're all familiar with the community and the needs of students as well as taxpayers and things like that. So I would be looking for your vote as a write-in candidate, and I would appreciate the opportunity to do that. Yes.
Yeah. Could you talk about, as a school board member, what are your two priorities for the coming year as somebody who's going to, you know, be on the school board?
Well,
What do we need to be aware of as a community about what issues you're facing with our school district this year?
well, would you say goals per se? What are my two
Your goals,
or top priorities?
Talk about what are the concerns, maybe that's what I would do. What are the things that
Well-
we as citizens to be aware of that the school board is facing?
Well, you know, and it's not so much to me what I want to have the citizens be aware of, because that sounds a little more informative rather than a dialogue. And I'd like.
Certainly you're facing issues coming up as a school board, so I'm looking to you as a potential school board member to tell us, because I don't, you know, there's a lot of things to keep track of, right?
Well, the one thing, the top one that I have realized is the only time that there's a significant outcome to a school board meeting is when the budget needs to be approved. I've spent many school board meetings being one of 3 or 4 attendees at the meeting that's not actually on the board, except for budget time. When budget time rolls around, there's a lot of people that come out of the woodwork because, let's face it, that's when the money is discussed. So obviously, I would have to, that would be number one priority, because I know it generates the most interest from the town folk, as it may be. And I would assume that interest doesn't involve the budget going up. Most people would prefer that the budget either maintain or go down. So that would be, for me, one priority. And the other half of that is, my priority would be to make sure that these students are getting all that they can get in order to have a viable future for themselves, to have individual needs met for every student in that school, because I'm a person that wants to see the kids of this community go as far as if they want to leave this community, I want them to have the opportunity to leave this community with an education and ready for what's out there. I have a passion for that.
Anything else?
What about the state mandated to pay 55% of taxes? And
I'd love for that to happen.
so we have to do, make the state go up, you know, fulfill their obligation to all these boards, all these school boards.
Well, it would start with a new governor. That's where it would start.
And then the second question would be, do you know, is there a state or federal mandate regarding the number of students per classroom or teacher in this area?
Is there a state mandate for maximum number of students per classroom? I am not sure on that.
Because it just seems like nowadays, I mean, a lot of people in here are older. Some of us have moved here from other places and don't have children, and have never had children in any of the schools. And of course, we want them to be educated. But tax-wise, it gets really difficult for people who
Which leads to my top priority for my last question, correct?
yeah, but I just wonder what the state or whatever is their mandate, because
Because there's too few kids in the class?
we go back to when we were in school, and I know where I went to school, we got 30 to 40 kids per class, and we still got a good education. I don't quite understand nowadays why, classes with 10 kids in it, or less than that.
Well, I c-
I've got so many teachers and so many classrooms and so many everything. And it's just like the school buses. You used to have to walk or go to a school bus stop. Now you get behind a school bus and every 10 feet we stop to let everybody out in their driveway. There's some things I really just don't understand.
Well, I can tell you that you're not going to see the days here where there's 40 kids in a classroom, otherwise we're only going to have 5 classrooms up here.
Maybe that's a solution. Some of this, bring down the amount of classrooms. I read in the paper where they said possibly if we close Stockton Spring School to pre-K, there might be one room and possibly a second room where you could put the pre-K kids. I'm not real familiar, but I realize that I've been told that these schools are only like half filled to capacity. And I know that they're trying to bring the other school and bring all that in, but, I just don't know anymore about how much emphasis we put on every single person having and I know some of that is state mandated as far as special education and things like that, but I'm just wondering, if the school budget is gonna keep going up and we pay so much. I had the county commissioner tell me that it's $18,000 per student here, and that's absolutely absurd.
Well, I have absolutely no intention of the budget going up. That's not anything that I pay taxes here too. So I have absolutely no interest in my taxes going up any more than I have, yours going up. As far as the number of students maximum allowed in a classroom, I would have no problem looking into that. And I'd be more than happy if, after this is over, you get a hold of me for any concern. And what I can tell you is, if I don't have the answer, I'm not going to pull your leg. I'm going to tell you I don't know the answer, but I'm also going to tell you I'll find out what it is, and then I'll get back to you and tell you what it is.
I believe it's up to the local school board to set the minimum or maximum number of children in a classroom. Yeah. Any other question? Oh, yes. Dick?
Jerry, I just want to say, it's nice to see someone step up, want to take a position of a school with all this going on, in the transition about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
I'd like to add, it's nice to see somebody under 75.
yeah, I would like to thank everyone who is here. The three selectmen who are trying to be selectmen, it's very difficult when you don't know what a question is going to be and you are you have to think so fast on your feet. It's a difficult position to be put in, and they all did a wonderful job, and it's stressful, I think, to have that happen to you. So I think we owe them a real round of applause. Yes,
I wonder who the little guy is on the card.
I'm sorry?
The little guy on the card, on the green card. The little picture of the little guy on the card. We're still trying to figure out who he is.
Oh. I see, okay. All right, and there are refreshments, and James is in the back if you have any questions.